Welcome to Campaign 2018. I'm your host, Richard A. Klatte. This is all part of Northwest Community TV. We are a part of the CCX empire. We are CCX Create. And I want to honor, my great honor to welcome Chris Wright. Chris, welcome to the show. Candidate for governor from the grassroots legalized cannabis party. Campaign 2008, you're running for governor, as I understand.
Yes, pleasure to be here.
All right, now, you've run before. This is something you're a man of experience. Your background is a businessman, but one of your key issues is that cannabis is illegal in the state of Minnesota, and you want to make it legal. That's what got you started in politics, I understand.
Yes, that's correct. People have asked me. One guy asked, he says, "Well, Chris, don't you have something better to do with your life than legalizing marijuana and drugs?" Mm-hmm. And I had to say to him, "Well, I'm fighting for freedom myself. Right. Don't you have something better to do than to vote for people who want to create a complete police state?"
Of course. And of course, big money politics talks, to run for governor. How many millions do you think the Democrat and Republican will spend just running on the governor's race?
Well, the money-chosen candidates, what difference does it make if your candidates are selected for you like they are in totalitarian China, or in an oligarchy like Minnesota or Russia? The money-chosen candidates are, people didn't select them. They didn't. Most people don't have enough money to contribute to campaigns, and so they end up voting for. The vote is already over before they've even cast their vote.
True.
So they are chosen for you, and people have this idea that they are actually voting for someone that they selected. But it's really a manipulated consent, mm-hmm. and people have this, here they got more allegiance to money than the voters. And it's like if you were to go, it's like the burglar who, when he, they're not going to bring about campaign finance reform. No. They profit from maintaining the status quo, but it's kind of like the burglar who gets to the second floor, and then once he gets there, you think he's going to kick out the money ladder from underneath him? Well, they're just not going to do it.
No.
But a lot of people.
Yeah, but Chris, people say that marijuana is the gateway to heroin, cocaine, a life of ruin. How do you answer your critics when they bring that up to you?
Well, I think it's going to be the gateway to expanding the economy and to
if you tax it properly.
and to help out
God
the farmers.
God forbid if we put some of that money to health clinics or how about education? Would that work?
Like for instance, there's a great debate on now about the opioid epidemic. And now that they have discovered the cannabinoid receptors in the brain, they've also discovered these cannabinoid drugs that are as effective as morphine but are not addicting. Do you see them being used at all? And then of course there's the addiction interruption drug, ibogaine, which 95% of people when they go through a treatment of this do not go through withdrawal symptoms at all.
Really?
And then at that point, once they're off, they have no more craving for it. That's a point where you can work with a person to help them beat their addiction.
Well, right now, education is very important. What's the status? What is the law on marijuana in Minnesota right now? Because you can get a doctor's slip or something where they'll say you need a medical marijuana, medicinal marijuana, I believe. Yeah. Is that's where we are right now in the state of Minnesota?
Right.
So what does it take to get on to have your doctor say I've got a bad neck, I got a bad back, and I'm not entirely sure of all the maladies that
are
That fall
covered
under
by the most restrictive medical marijuana law in all of the states that have medical marijuana. But we know that it doesn't cover enough maladies for people that are suffering and are dying.
Oh, really?
And we've come to find out that THC has been found to actually kill cancer.
Right, sure.
And
Well,
right now they're doing clinical studies over in Colorado for glioma patients who are children, and they have brain cancer. And if marijuana was such a bad thing, then why are they treating children to kill their cancer with a cannabinoid drug? So we know that it's also been shown to reduce the amyloid plaque that builds up for people who have Alzheimer's as well. And so, but I don't really want to just talk about cannabis. We have
many issues.
There's
we got to set the foundation.
Yes, I agree.
It's something we got to build on, because that's your history. That's what got you going.
It is.
But now, once you get into politics, you see how money corruption and the all this money that could be going to benefit the citizens of Minnesota is going to the super rich, and the super rich are putting their people in office to get what they want, obviously. Even our great president, Donald Trump, said, that's why I donated so I could buy these politicians.
Well, they invest in both candidates.
Right.
So that when they do get into office, they will have a say.
Oh, heads they win, tails we lose.
Well, of course. But in terms of other issues, I'm also very big on single-payer health care.
Of course.
And
could we do that statewide? I think Vermont or
yes,
state out east tried to do it, but they didn't have a big enough pool.
So I think that was probably not true. But they made it out to be that way, so that there's going to be quite an onslaught if we try to get this passed.
Well, yeah, the insurance companies are going to come after you.
Well, of course.
And the pharmaceuticals, they want to get, God forbid if you go to Canada and get an aspirin there for a nickel, well, that aspirin here costs you $1.
Right. Well, and the medical companies and so on, especially the pharmaceuticals, they're charging astronomical prices, and yet they pay far less in other countries, and yet we're actually subsidizing the research for these drugs, and these ungrateful pharmaceuticals are
taking all the profits.
Are sticking it to the people who are the most vulnerable. And
then you also have these hatchet men out here. A year or two ago, this guy bought up a drug company or something, and some drug that people needed, cost like $100. He jacks up the price to like $600. Then we find out he's a crook from Wall Street.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other big issues I have that none of the other candidates are talking about is medical waste, fraud, and abuse.
Okay.
We know that we spend probably $350 billion is wasted in just waste, fraud, and abuse.
Sure.
That's half the military budget a year in the United States. And Professor Malcolm Sparrow from Harvard University.
Now you're talking about waste nationwide?
Yeah, nationwide. But it's also happening in our state.
Oh, of course.
And we have these probably 10 to 20% of all medical billing is fraud.
Okay.
So in my opinion, if we put together a a state-of-the-art fraud control unit, we could probably save the state $1 billion, because we spend about $10 billion a year on medical in the state.
Okay.
And even without single-payer health care, we could save the state $1 billion. Now,
well, then you could refunnel that money into coverage. Well, the most important thing is you got to get the people covered, because right now I think with the Republicans nationwide, we're going to get rid of Obamacare and we're going to have a better system. Well, right now I understand like 18 more million people are without insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd say, we should be considering health care as a right.
Of course.
And not just a privilege.
Well, the only way it's going to work is if we're all in the same pool.
Right.
Because if you got young people that are paying into the same system, you got old people, you got people with pre-existing problems, of course. But if we're all paying into the same pool, well, then you got complete coverage for everybody. No way.
Exactly.
That's the only system that's going to work. You talk to anybody with half a brain and a doctor, they said, no, you can't have 5 different insurance companies billing 5 different hospitals, and you're paying for the administration costs that are sky high. When that money, if you get rid of those administration costs, right there, you're saving billions of dollars.
There's also all this. One of the big arguments against single payer is that it's going to drive up taxes just enormously, and we can't afford to pay for that.
Why would that?
But my point is other countries pay nearly half of what we do in our medical expenses.
Yeah, but you got to wait in line. If you go to Canada, Chris, you know that. If you got a surgery, you've got to wait a year in line. You got people lined up and waiting. What? That's nonsense?
Yes, of course it is.
But that's what the Republicans
I think given that people can have their choice of doctor and hospital, and would pay, and the quality never went down, I think they would prefer to pay half as much than pay twice as much, even if it did raise their taxes.
And of course, one of the top reasons for bankruptcy in this country is medical. Your insurance runs out after $100,000 or something. You have something catastrophic happen to you, and you run out of insurance after $100,000. Well, that doesn't take much, and you're stuck with whatever illness you have. Exactly.
And I'd like to speak a little bit on the issue of education.
Yes.
And I've always been proud of the Finns, because they are the most educated population on the planet.
Yes.
But how do they do that?
How do they do that?
Well, they have a guaranteed right to education in their constitution.
Now, is that to high school or to college, or as far as
that's all the way to college, even postdoctorate.
Yeah, but this is a socialism system you're trying to pull on us.
Well,
you have to qualify for that.
Well, if you get the grades, you can move on.
Right.
But if you can't, obviously, but their constitution says, hey, based on your abilities and special needs.
Right.
So, but here it is that to be the minimum qualification to be a teacher in Finland is you have to have at least a master's degree and be selected from the top 10% of your class.
Right.
And of course, their education for those teachers is free of charge. Mm-hmm. But the qualification in Minnesota, of course, is the minimum qualification is a bachelor's degree. And those teachers have to go into crushing debt.
Right,
to be able to become a teacher. I don't think that. I think we can do better, have better standards, and do a lot better. Then on the issue of tuition-free higher education, well, a lot of people say, well, how are you going to pay for that, Chris? Well, in his book on why public higher education should be free, Robert Samuels said that in 2010 he found out that the average was about $14,700 for 4 year, and about $7,500 for two-year college. And when he added it all up, it came to about $132 billion to make all public higher education free.
Sure.
And while that seems like a colossal amount, it is. It is actually, when you consider what the federal government is paying and the state governments,
Sure.
you know that we are already spending enough to make public higher education free. And I think that of course, we can't get the federal government probably to kick in, but that means that Minnesota would only be able to come up with two-year undergraduate higher education that would be free. Mm-hmm. That is one of my issues, and that is something I want to...
It's a good place to start, too, because some people after 2 years, they say, well, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to go a different route. But if you've gone those 2 years and this is what you're doing, then that added 2 years you can probably afford. You can probably work that out.
Well,
but then it's something that, if you have that goal, I'm sure you can work it out. But it's something where these people, right out of high school, they know they can at least go that route. Right now, they're looking at what? $100,000 in debt to get a 4-year degree.
It's amazing. And of course, all the other things that it takes to be in college, room and board, and some of these other things that really add up the cost. However, we know that there's a lot of administrative bloat out there. And,
shocking! I find that shocking.
Imagine this: that U of M President Eric Kaler, his chief of staff makes $195,000 a year. That's $75,000 more than the governor. I should be running for Eric Kaler's chief of staff.
What do you think the linebacker coach for the football team makes?
Well, and there it is that undergraduates are ending up subsidizing other parts of the university system. The administrative bloat and all the money that's going into all these other things means that they increase class sizes.
Sure.
They increase tuition. They use part-time teachers and then graduate students to make up the difference. And now our students are getting shortchanged. And so I've proposed this, that we have conditional funding for higher education. Yeah, you're going to get our money on the condition that, number one, 75% of all faculty is full-time. Mm-hmm. And 50% of all funding goes for direct instructional costs.
Right.
And that class size, only 25% of classes can have more than 25 students. Lower class sizes, we know, works for elementary students. Why shouldn't it work for, college students?
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest tonight, Chris Wright from the Grassroots Legalized Cannabis Party, running for governor. Now I understand this is your fourth shot at it?
This is.
What feedback are you getting back out there? I know the first time you ran in 1998, you got close to 1,800 votes. 2010, close to 8,000 votes. 2014, 32,000 votes. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Now, how do you feel? What are you polling out there? You're talking to the people.
Well,
what kind of feedback are you getting?
I don't know. They just had a NPR Star Tribune poll, and apparently I'm polling 2%.
All right.
And libertarians are polling 1%. But I think this can change.
Well, you want to build on this because you want to get to at least 5%, and then you get your name on the ballot, automatic ballot access.
Well, then you would qualify as a major party.
Right, and then plus you'd get financing too, wouldn't you?
And then you get public financing
so it's not
as well.
So it's not a wasted vote.
No, it isn't. And
how do you? That's another big point we should make. It stresses that a vote for a third-party person is a wasted vote. I'm sure you hear that all the time.
They like to call us spoilers.
Right.
But I noticed that the real spoilers, the money-chosen candidates, they've spoiled our economy, our environment, and our social policies. and they have the nerve to call us spoilers, but we haven't had a chance to spoil anything. You know, it's not even a case of the kettle calling the pot black. You know.
Okay, I want to get some information out. It's very important. Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. You can go to voteright.org. That's vote WRIGHT .org, and we plan on putting out some some commercials. I have one out there that I've been playing on cable called "Let My People Grow."
Heck yeah.
So you might check that out on the website too.
Excellent. Okay, so there's also in the state of Minnesota, I understand that there's a refund system where if a married couple want to donate $100 to you, you can give them a receipt, they fill out a form, mail it in, and the state of Minnesota will refund that $100 for a married couple, $50 for an individual. Is that correct?
Yes, you can get yourself a reefer refund.
There you go. Well earned. Well earned, I would say.
And,
Minnesota is one of the few states that does that.
Well, one of the things I've been proposing is campaign finance reform, of course.
Okay.
One of my big issues, and really, basically, you shouldn't be able. A political party or a candidate should not be able to take any money at all for
big
media,
corporations.
To pay for media or anything like that. Well, the state should be able to provide that for free. Then there's no.
And these stations, they should be able to supply time.
Of course, a palliative idea I have was, why don't, instead of having to give the candidate $50 to get $50 back and mess around with vouchers and the mail and all of this, well, why don't we give everyone $75 tied to inflation, and with an account at the campaign finance board with a username and password that they can give to the candidate or party of their choice.
Heck yeah!
And here then we could be the money choosers instead of the others.
Well, another issue you just brought up briefly, and I've heard you before, a major concern for you is, I call pollution. You can call it global warming, climate change.
Yeah.
But doesn't it make sense to, some people say there's clean coal, and I'm kind of leaning more towards renewable energies. And I'm also saying, I don't believe it's a Chinese hoax either, right? I think climate change, global, you put all this pollution in the air, there's going to be consequences. Am I confused? Am I a bleeding heart, pinko-commie socialist?
I have a friend that says, well, what if global warming is a hoax and we create a better world for nothing?
We clean up the air, we clean up the water?
Nothing apparently is our children, grandchildren, and future generations.
Sure.
That's not funny at all.
No.
And to threaten the survival of humanity, anyone who believes that they should protect the profits of the few and endanger the rest has a broken moral compass, period.
And then, I think it was Exxon that did studies 40 years ago.
79.
They've known this for years.
Yeah.
They've hushed it up. It comes out that they've been sitting on this, and 99 out of 100 scientists agree with the facts that global warming's, it's obvious. But no, there's always this one person that gets equal time that's a stooge for the oil companies, right. And he says, no, nothing's proven. Nothing's proven to the side, but you over time, you can tell these hurricanes are getting stronger, flooding's getting stronger, these storms are getting stronger. We instead of having one of these storms every 100 years, we have a storm. This is our third 100-year storm we've had in the last couple years.
Well, I've done a little bit of studying on this, and what these climate scientists are telling us is that we can only put another 275 gigatons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere from now on to stay within this 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, what they feel is a survivable zone.
Sure.
And so that means that if we don't start reducing right now at 3% per year, 0 by 2050, we will have exceeded that within 14 years if we do nothing. And then we would have to, in 2030, we would have to reduce at 20% per year, 0 by 2035, an almost impossible feat. So there's no time to waste right now.
Well, what can you do on a state level? I know California is kind of like leading the way. They're passing their own stringent laws. They say, well, the federal government run by Donald Trump is hopeless. Look at who they put in running the EPA, a total whack job. They got run out of office after a year. So now Trump is totally, well, we won't even go into that, but what can the state of Minnesota do?
And you can see my plan on my website, voteright.org, under combat global warming. But I have a full plan there where first, a simple law that says all new electrical power generation shall be renewable.
Right.
Will get us start us down that path, and that has to include storage as well. And so for the various industries, for electrical power generation, for transportation, for the metals industry, cement makers, the architecture, and so on, all farming, everyone is going to have to first meet some deadlines. By 2025, we reduce by 30%, 60% by 2035, and 100% by 2050.
I think we can do that. Well, we're down to our last couple minutes, Chris. I want to make sure we can stress that you're on the ballot. You went out and got the signatures, correct? You did your homework.
Yeah. Almost got arrested twice.
You're fighting the good fight. And once again, we want people to get fired up. The most important thing is get out and vote. People have got to get out and vote. I can't stress. That's why I'm down here as a volunteer, bringing candidates. I've got an open door format that I want to educate the public. And I want the most important thing is get involved, get out and vote.
Well, and I agree. And these, we have other candidates that are on the ballot. We have Sarah Wellington for Senate. We have other candidates as well in the legal marijuana now party.
Does the grassroots legalized cannabis party have like a campaign headquarters somewhere?
Well, it's my house.
All right. Well, once again, why don't you give the information on how to contact you?
Well, anyway, yes, you can go to voteright.org, and let's. Pot makes you cough, but politics makes you gag. Right. And let's get growing.
That's right. Okay, Chris Wright, thank you for coming in. Good luck for campaign 2018. It's been a pleasure, and I want to stress this enough. Get out and vote. Get involved. Your future's at stake. I'm Richard A. Klatte. This is campaign 2018. All part of Northwest Community TV, the CCX media empire. We are CCX Create. Thank you and good night.